Hello students, welcome to Epg Pathshala. Today in this module we are going to talk about religion, rituals and ecology. This module will explain key concepts in ecology and religion, such as the greening of religions, while using illustrations to demonstrate eco-friendly ritualistic practices of religious and nature worshipping traditional communities. This module will engage in detail with the eco-theology in the light of integration of the world religions on the issues of environmental degradation and ecological crisis of present times. This module will enable basic yet detailed understanding of the genesis of the growing ecological concerns globally, processes and interreligious engagements involved in effecting common platforms for bringing the diverse religious and traditional practices towards the single goal, that is protecting our planet. The natural human tendency is to seek its place in the universe, the answer for which it seeks in moral philosophy and in modern religion. Human beings have been both influenced and engineered by their own ideas for centuries in the past and will continue to do so in the future. However, probably for the first time, it is facing an economic and ecological crisis in a scale as today that threatens its future existence. The increasing awareness and recognition of the ecological disruptions by the unscrupulous anthropocentric activities propelled by neoliberal economic interests and the accompanying destruction on the account of natural calamities, loss of biodiversity, etc., continues to bring together multi-stakeholders, including multiple religions, into the realm of environmental protection and conservation ecology. This subfield is founded on the understanding that, in the words of Iranian-American philosopher Syed Hossein Nasr, I quote, "The environmental crisis is fundamentally a crisis of values," unquote, and that religions, being the primary sources of ethics and values in any culture, are thus implicated in the decisions human beings make regarding their environment. The relationship between religion and environment is a well-established subject of academic discussion and has attracted formal responses from all of the major world religions. Religion and environmentalism is an emerging subfield in the academic disciplines of religious studies, religious ethics, the sociology of religion, and theology, among others, with environmentalism and environmental studies. It is in this broader ecological contexts that this module will study religious concepts and thought processes vis-a-vis the issues surrounding ecology. Let's first look at ecology, ecosystems, and environment. What do we understand by these three terms? The term ecology was coined by Ernst Haeckel in the year 1869. It is the scientific study of distribution, abundance, and relations of organisms and their interactions with the environment. Ecology includes the study of plant and animal populations and ecosystems. It is a subdiscipline of biology, and unlike the descriptive study of organisms, it is a study of life, which is evolution. Transley described ecosystems as basic unit of nature to study ecology, as he considered that organism cannot be separated from the environment of the biome. An ecosystem is a self-regulating group of biotic communities of species interacting with one another and with the non-living environment, exchanging energy and matter. Now, ecology is often defined as the study of ecosystems. Ecology is closely related to the disciplines of physiology, evolution, genetics and behavior, and is not synonymous with environment, environmentalism, or environmental science. Studies relating to life processes explaining adaptations, distribution and abundance of organisms, the movement of materials and energy through living organisms and communities, the progressive development of ecosystems, and the abundance and distribution of biodiversity in the context of environment are broader area of study to understand the concept of ecology. Like many of the natural sciences, the term environment over a period of time advanced from mere meaning of physical surrounding to include in it all biological, that is biotic factors such as genes, cells, organisms of some or different species, and the biotic that includes non-biological entities, that is non-living factors like inorganic materials and physical aspects such as oxygen, carbon dioxide, temperature, light, climate, rainfall, etc. Environment is thus defined as, I quote, "the sum total of the water, air, and land and the interrelationships that exist among them and with the human beings, other living organisms, and materials," unquote. What is the relation between religion and ecology? Religious concepts have been prominent in discourse on environmental responsibility. For example, caring for creation, or co-creation, or earth goddess, or earth theology, or ecological scene, or integrity of creation, nature as Eden, or stewardship. All such ideas emphasize on the wider identity of environment, including spiritual whole beyond materialistic and human concerns, embracing the wider community of life. Environmental issues may thus provide a new context in which religious traditions or individuals and groups within them may reinterpret their beliefs, challenge dominant views, and regain legitimacy and public relevance through reimagining the environment, providing explanations of and answers to environmental problems. The environmental crisis faced by humanity currently, which J. Baird Kelly called Homo petroleumous, threatens the Earth ecosystem in a biotic that is seen as the defining challenge of our age. The solution to this crisis lay more than in economics or technological adjustment and extends to moral, sociological, and spiritual issues. This puts into question a particular cultural view of the world, the modern secular worldview, described as the Enlightenment mentality. Proponents of this worldview initially saw it as a way of liberating individuals from the authority of the Christian church and natural environment by placing priority on reason, objectivity, and progress. However, this also led to the germination of the desire to exercise domination over nature, leading to its exploitation with little thought of the consequences or of the moral issues involved. This scheme separated humanity and environment, and previous animistic ways of pursuing the environment were replaced with a secular mechanical one, with nature reduced to material resources without life or spirit. Tu Weiming sees this as the crisis of modernity, an inability to experience nature as the embodiment of spirit, seeing it merely for economic or technological needs, resulting in an ecological illiteracy and biophobic destructiveness where humans, for Mary Evelyn Tucker and John Green, make macrophase, that is environmental changes, with microphase wisdom. Let's talk about greening the religions. Peter Bayer, in particular, sees environmentalism as one possible way to revitalize religion and influence the global system in an eco-theology that would have eschatological implication for all of the humanity. In this scheme, religion would address residual matters of the dominant system, that is its ethical, environmental, or social consequences, bridging the gap between private and public, linking religious functions, that is beliefs, and performance, that is applications or public influence. Here, environmental issues provide an arena of religious expression, not only as critical matters of public concern, but also as indicators of root causes of the problems, which are seen as moral and spiritual values, with religion being necessary for their resolution. Religious environmentalism may thus become a social movement based on religious resources, giving meaning to and promising the power to overcome the consequences of modern secular values and structures. By the 1990s, many scholars of religion had entered the debate and begun to generate a substantial body of literature discussing and analyzing how nature is valued in various religious systems of the world. A landmark event in this direction was a series of 10 conferences on religion and ecology organized by Yale University professors Mary Evelyn Tucker and John Green, held at Harvard University's Center for the Study of World Religions from 1996 to 1998. From these conferences, Tucker and Green would form the Yale Forum on Religion and Ecology. The forum has been instrumental in the creation of scholarship, in forming environmental policy, and in the greening of religion and religious studies. An explicit and overt ecological awareness on the part of religious traditions, a non-anthropocentric reinterpretation of humanity, nature, and the sacred that extends beliefs, ethics, identities, and sacredness beyond humanity to nature as a whole, has been encouraged and growing during a period that Roderick Nash terms as the greening of religions. The phenomenon of greening of religions essentially involves infusion of religious traditions into resources for environmentally sustainable livelihoods and activism. During the last few decades, a field known most often as religion and ecology emerged, focusing first on identifying these obstacles, secondly on the resources such religions may have available for promoting environmentally beneficent behaviors. A third normative agenda often accompanied these two more descriptive ones to promulgate the religious beliefs and practices that produce environmentally responsible behaviors, reappraising, reconfiguring the traditions as needed so they can provide the needed conceptual, spiritual, and practical ways for environmentally beneficent behavior. Such resources were usually produced by the scholars of specific traditions, where their efforts were largely towards aligning their respective religious traditions with environment and ecology friendly and sustainable lifeways. Many examples of such religious productions are reviewed in the Encyclopedia of Religion and Nature that got published in the year 2004. These thinkers clearly believed that the roots of environmental crisis reside in defective religious perceptions. For example, Nelson, in his publication in 1998, argues that one of the Hinduism's principal theological tradition, Advaita Vedanta, is indeed founded on dualism, in which the physical and conscious world is to be renounced in the quest for the moksha, or liberation from birth and rebirth. The world of consciousness and matter, or Maya, usually glossed as illusion, is worthless and to be despised. This proposition reads less favorable to a viewpoint for environmental concerns. Between 1997 and 2004, volumes of series appeared that were written by thinkers of world's more major religious traditions: Buddhism, Christianity, Confucianism, Taoism, Hinduism, indigenous traditions, Jainism, Judaism, Islam, and Shinto, with a hope to revitalize the green dimensions of all these religions. Max Oehlenschläger, for example, promoted the greening of Christianity in his book Caring for Creation, an ecumenical approach to the environmental crisis that got published in 1994. And he was hoping for a paleo counter-revolution, ecologically beneficent lifeways of Paleolithic people, as modern religious traditions posed severe threat to the spiritual and material worlds. J. Bade Kellicott, on the other hand, ambitiously harbored the hope to contribute to the greening of old world religions in a series of works culminating in his publication in 1994 titled Earth's Insights, a survey of ecological ethics from the Mediterranean basin to the Australian outback. He sought to identify the religious obstacles to and resources for green behavior in a wide variety of cultures around the world. He nevertheless insisted that to be ecological and compelling, they must be updated in such a way so as to cohere with evolutionary science, and was interested in developing natural history as religion. His reflection for nature and religion rested on scientific understandings and narratives. For Oehlenschläger, on the other hand, efforts were to be made to rekindle spiritualities that consider nature directly sacred in some ways. The recognition by diverse religionists, activists, and scholars of nature being endangered by human activities have led to initiatives to bridge the gap between what is ecological decline and what ought to be, that is, environmentally sustainable lifeways. Without supernatural beings, there is no religion. For there are many examples around the world where people feel and speak of a spiritual connection to nature, or of belonging to the earth, Mother Earth, or even Mother Ocean, or speaking of the earth as sacred without any concomitant confessions of supernatural beliefs. Environmental degradation at the alarming rate has increasingly drawn world religions into the task of addressing the concerns from the standpoint of environmental science. This environmental science is, of course, built upon Darwinian foundations, which, on the one hand, provides a way to understand the loss that comes with anthropogenic extinctions, while on the other hand, this science erodes the supernaturalistic beliefs that are the ground of most religions and most nature as sacred religions, which often retain some supernaturalism. Let's talk about symbolism and traditional ecological knowledge as propounded by religions. Knowledge of the natural world is not confined to science. Societies around the earth have developed rich sets of experiences and explanations relating to their environments. This traditional ecological knowledge is passed from generation to generation by ritual or oral tradition. It has been the basis for agriculture, healthcare, education, conservation, and the wide range of other activities that sustain societies in many parts of the world. Indigenous people have a broad knowledge of how to live sustainably. However, formal education and academic learning has disrupted the practical everyday aspects of such indigenous knowledge, replacing the same with abstract knowledge. According to Girtz, the discovery of the phonetic script was the dawn of an abstract way of life away from the nature, connected to the lively and bodily existence of human beings. Living on limited resources and being closely interrelated to the ecology of life have enabled many indigenous cultures to independently develop certain sustainable belief systems, such as showing a sense of compassion and empathy to all forms of life, recognizing human beings as a link in the network of relationship in the web of life, embracing sustainability as a practice, legitimizing community needs before individual rights so as to increase the collective ability to thrive and survive, believing that people belonging to the land and not the other way around, embracing sustainability as a community with the least possible intrusion to the environment, and sanctifying and worshipping nature for sustaining life. Prior to the development of monotheistic and polytheistic organized religions, although each culture had its own myths and beliefs, a current of spiritual and supernatural perspectives were shared among most of the indigenous cultures. This was to be termed as animism or pantheism, rejecting the dualism of mind and a physical body. The belief maintained that the spiritual and material world are not two different entities, and the souls exist not just in human beings, but even in animals and plants, rocks and rivers and thunder, wind and shadows. While in animistic cultures everything is spiritual, pantheistic culture see the spiritual nature of everything in existence as united. It is also interesting to note that nature religions or green religions, nature as sacred religions, including paganism, pagans generally express affinity with what they perceive to be the nature, beneficent spiritualities and life ways of indigenous peoples, viewing these as kindred to their own religious outlook. Many New Age and New Religious movements, environmentalism itself, and mainstream religions as well, have attempted to learn, borrow, appropriate, or steal, depending on one's ethical evaluation of such phenomenon or the specific examples of it at hand, from indigenous religions and indigenous belief systems. In 1963, Lalita Prasad Vidyarthi, who studied the socio-economic life of the Malay tribe in Bihar, came up with the nature-man-spirit complex, a theoretical and methodological model to describe the soul of a culture. The Malay life revolved around the forests of hills and cultivations. A major part of Malay resources and energy were also spent in their religious beliefs towards making sacred performances to supernatural beings that they called spirits. The third aspect was the network of relationship in terms of structure and organization of family, social institutions, and life cycle of a typical Malay. Nature, spirit, and man were three parts of a culture inextricably intertwined and interwoven. The rituals of the Malay tribe, she or he thus found, showed honor and reverence to the spirit and nature which had a major influence over them, but which they had no control over. By performing rituals, they believed they could bring pressure to appease the spirits and the nature. It is a complex because the relevance or the effect of one on the other, nature, man, or spirit, has to be seen as a whole in a culture. Nature and spirit conditions some of the social practices while man adapts to or accommodates them depending on the circumstances. The reliance of human beings on nature and on supernatural relates to his or her culture. So does the severity of traditions. Applied in a different cultural contexts to a different people in a different ecological setting, be it a hunter-gatherer society or a highly industrialized world. This complex gives a useful scientific tool to study the complementarities of human and non-human world. Animal sacrifices and veneration of the dead are common practices in most religions and can be seen to fit into this complex easily. The eco-religion, they laid down traditions, customs and rituals to ensure that the complex abstract principles they had developed could be put into practice. Over time, these practices developed agricultural technology, methods of environmental protection, and knowledge of medicinal properties of the trees. The importance of eco-religion in environmental conservation can be seen in the Bishnois of Rajasthan. The Bishnois are a community of nature worshippers in the state. They also have a sizable presence in the neighboring states of Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Gujarat, Haryana, Punjab and Delhi. For over half a millennium, The Bishnois, estimated to be around 6 million, have evolved their lifestyle into a religion that fiercely protects the environment, the trees, and the animals. The Himalayan hills of Uttar Pradesh in India in early 1970s, people collectively rose to defend local interests against timber logging by contractors and private agencies that had jeopardized ecological stability and reduced local people's opportunity to benefit from sound forest exploitation. That was called the Chipko movement, which originated in the hills of Uttar Pradesh and was spearheaded by women who protected the trees from felling by hugging them. And this movement itself was inspired by the eco-religious philosophy of the Bishnois of Rajasthan. Christianity and eco-theology. The relationship of theology to the modern ecological crisis became an intense issue of debate in Western academia in 1967, following the publications of the article The Historical Roots Over Ecological Crisis by Lynn White Jr., professor of history at the University of California at Los Angeles. In his work, White put forward a theory that the Christian model of human domination over nature has led to environmental devastation. It was in this context that eco-theology emerged as a form of constructive theology. The social and spiritual movement focuses on the interrelationship of religion and nature in the light of environmental concerns. It is based on the premise that there exists a causal relationship between human religious and spiritual worldviews and the degradation of nature. In 1973, theologian Jake Rogers published an article in which he surveyed published studies of approximately 12 theologians, which had appeared since White's article. They reflect the search for an appropriate theological model which adequately assesses the biblical data regarding any relationship of God, humans, and nature. While St. Francis of Assisi is one of the more obvious influences on Christian eco-theology, there are many theologians and teachers whose works have profound implications for Christian thinkers. Eco-theology is also defined as the web of life movement, as it comprises concerns over environment and humans, both as the central organizing principle of its social vision. Agricultural people typically had a sense of the web of life because their lives depended on being integrated into nature and surrounding. The contemporary or post-industrial eco-theology, while not against modern technology, is averse to the mechanistic way of understanding the world and consumerism which led to abuse of the planet. Rather than being centrally attributed to any one religious authority of the world, eco-theology is seen now as a way of life which can be embodied from many different religious points of view by people who seek a creative alternative to consumerism and fundamentalism. Unabated developmental activities have caused natural disasters, wreaking havoc to human lives and property. The frequency and impact of disasters are exacerbated by the commodification and plunder of the ecosystem for profit. Disasters are not only caused by corporate interests, but they also provide the corporations with new opportunities to continue their pillage in the name of humanitarian interventions and reconstruction. Naomi Klein calls this phenomenon disaster capitalism. So the groaning of the creation is engendering a public protest, compelling humans to perceive the ecological crisis as genocide and ecocide, which could have been avoided had it opted for a life-affirming and communitarian worldview as well as just and egalitarian social relations as enshrined also in the Earth Charter. The groaning here is used as a metaphor to display the inherent immortality at par with sinfulness in Christian viewpoint of the prevailing order and the resilience of the victims to transform it, which biblically the term groaning is also a form of God talk. The groaning of the creation exposes the structural sin and injustices that eternalize death and destruction in our communities. During the 80s, theologians and religious groups alike had spent time articulating particular viewpoints. By the 90s, a plethora of religious voices and organizations could be found, and various ecumenical efforts flourished. Perhaps the most important was the global religious, indigenous, and NGO effort to be heard at and to influence the 1992 United Nations Conference on Environment and Development in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, and the subsequent Kyoto Conference and the global climate change. In many ways, the result of the conference at Rio was the Earth Charter. The Earth Charter was developed in the last decade of the 20th century, which strives for developing communities that are just, sustainable, participatory, non-violent, and compassionate. The Charter was debated and commented by non-governmental organizations, professional societies, international experts in many fields, and by representatives of the many world religions, and was presented at UN Summit in Johannesburg. The foundation of the Charter is the idea that people of all religion and people without religion as well should live with respect and care for the community of life. The religious and NGO presence at UN conferences was an effort to make sure that voices of those most affected by economic development and environmental degradation, the indigenous, the poor, and developing countries, were heard, and to demonstrate that a new global ecological and morally just vision was needed to guide Earth's citizens. Let's talk about the subaltern eco-theological reflections. The subaltern eco-theological reflection is the vision of the marginalized communities about their lives on Earth in communion with all other living beings. This perspective draws a parallel between the perceived otherness of subordinate communities and the exploited nature. The personification of marginalized communities with nature as both being at the receiving ends of vested economic interests is what forms the subaltern eco-theological perspectives. Both marginalized and disposed communities and nature are being rendered powerless by being reduced into commodities to be plundered and exploited. Subaltern eco-theology envisions the interconnectedness between social justice, differences, and environmental degradation. It unmasks the brutal face of development and neoliberal globalization. It recognizes and retrieves the libertarian stance in the religious traditions, scriptures, rituals, and cosmogonies of subaltern communities, and uses them as resources into their struggles. Christian eco-theology draws on the writings of such authors as Jesuit priest and paleontologist Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, process theologian Alfred North Whitehead, and is well represented in Protestantism by John B. Cope Jr., Jürgen Moltmann, and ecofeminist theologians Rosemary Redford Ruther, Catherine Keller, and Sally McPegue. Creation theology is another important expression of eco-theology that has both been developed and popularized by Matthew Fox, the former Catholic priest. Abraham Joshua Heschel and Martin Buber, both Jewish theologians, have also left their mark on Christian eco-theology and provides significant inspiration for Jewish eco-theology. Hindu eco-theology includes writers such as Vandana Shiva, Syed Hossein Nasr, a liberal Muslim theologian, was one of the earlier voices calling for a re-evaluation of Western relationship to nature. While all world religions make claims about the foundational nature of human environmental interactions and include certain prescription and regulations that relate to non-humans, they do not directly or systematically address modern environmental challenges, including nuclear threats, global warming, toxic and chemical poisoning, and technologies that allow extraction, processing, and pollution on a previously unimagined scale. But even if religious traditions may not be equipped to address or guide in dealing with this modern crisis, yet by virtue of them being most influential in shaping the worldviews of humans, religions are indispensable in providing environmental ethics. And while social justice remains an ongoing agenda of peaceful coexistence of world religions, the challenge for religions is also to enlarge their ethical concerns and vision to include the more than human world. Social justice and environmental integrity are now being seen as part of the continuum. Thank you.